I want you to, well, just imagine something for a second. Imagine you spent years, like decades even, training to become the absolute best VCR repairman in the entire world.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that is a deeply unsettling scenario right out of the gate.
Right. I mean, you know every gear, every circuit, every little tracking dial. You are an undeniable master of your craft. And then one day you look up from your workbench and realize, bam, everyone is streaming movies on their phones.
And the really terrifying part of that is your mastery didn't degrade at all.
Exactly.
You didn't get worse at your job.
Yeah.
The market just entirely moved on without you, and it just rendered that mastery completely irrelevant.
And that exact terrifying reality check, that is the foundation of today's deep dive. We are talking about future-proofing your professional life, because that VCR scenario is playing out right now across, well, almost every modern career.
It really is. It's everywhere.
Yeah. So our mission today is to figure out how to navigate this. We're pulling our insights from a really fascinating piece of writing by Stella Pop, and it's titled Strategy is the New Skill. Such a great read.
It is. And the core argument is incredibly bold. It argues that treating your career like a spelling bee, where you just memorize the dictionary, stand at the microphone, and spit out the right technical answers, is a massive trap.
Yeah, that whole playbook is just, it's dead.
Totally. Instead, the author says, we need to treat our careers like a chess match. So we are going to deconstruct why that old playbook is dead, look at a real-world case study of who actually survives this shift, and then give you a 5-step starter kit to help you become the CEO of, basically, You, Inc.
I love that concept. It really requires a fundamental paradigm shift. We have to move away from asking, what tasks can I execute, to asking, where do I need to be positioned in order to win?
Right. So let's start by looking backward for just a moment to understand the scale of this shift. Paint a picture for us of the world when, as the Stella Pop article brilliantly puts it, I love this line, fax machines roam the earth.
Yeah, that line is great. Well, the formula back then was incredibly straightforward, right?
You learn a trade, you get highly proficient at it, you stay at the exact same company for like 40 years, they hand you a shiny gold watch, you retire, and you buy an RV.
The dream.
Right. And that model functioned beautifully because the ecosystem was just slower and far more stable.
Yeah.
You could literally spend 20 years perfecting one highly specific technical skill, and the market would consistently reward you for that loyalty and that deep, narrow mastery.
Because the barrier to entry was high.
Exactly. The barrier to entry for skills was high, so mastering one gave you a permanent moat. No one could just jump in and do what you did.
But the author of this piece says that world is now, and here's another great line, deader than Blockbuster on a Friday night in 2025.
Ouch. True, though.
It's a funny line, but it's actually pretty dark when you think about the implications for you and your career. Why is that old playbook completely obsolete now? I mean, is it just that the internet made everything faster?
Well, speed is a symptom, but the root cause is really commoditization.
Okay, unpack that a bit.
Technology has fundamentally commoditized hard skills. I mean, just think about the mechanics of what artificial intelligence is doing right now.
It's wild.
It can draft cohesive emails. It can design professional-grade graphics, write functional code, synthesize complex legal briefs.
Things that used to take years to learn.
Exactly. It used to take a human being 5 years of schooling and, like, a long apprenticeship to learn those discrete tasks. And now, software executes them for fractions of a cent, basically instantly.
So if your entire professional identity is wrapped up in being the person who, pushes the buttons or executes a specific task, you are competing in a race to the bottom against a machine that doesn't sleep or, ask for a 401k match.
You're going to lose that race every time.
Yeah. The text has this really vivid image. It says, you can be the Michelangelo of Excel or the Beyonce of PowerPoint.
I love that.
But if you lack strategy, you are just building sandcastles at high tide. The water is coming for you no matter how beautiful the castle is.
That is such a stark way to put it, but it's spot on.
But I do want to push back on this a little, or at least ask the question that has to be on your mind if you're listening to this. The source says, technology evolves every 18 months. Does that literally mean our hard-earned, really expensive skills are basically toast the moment we finally master them?
Well, it means their standalone value decays incredibly fast.
Okay.
Let's look at the mechanics of value here. If your entire career strategy is, I'm going to master this one specific software tool and ride it until retirement, you are anchoring your livelihood to a tool you don't even control.
Oh, right. Because someone else owns it.
Exactly. When that tool updates or automates or gets completely replaced by a competitor, your value goes to zero overnight. And it's compounded by the fact that corporate loyalty is just, well, it's a demolished two-way street at this point.
Which fundamentally breaks the unwritten contract we all signed when we entered the workforce. We were taught to climb the corporate ladder, put your head down, do the work.
But you can't climb a linear corporate ladder anymore because that specific ladder might not even exist tomorrow.
Wow. Yeah.
A private equity firm might buy the company. An algorithm might replace your entire division, or the whole industry might just pivot. Relying on an external corporate structure to dictate your career path is a highly, highly vulnerable position.
You have to build your own scaffolding.
You absolutely have to.
And that realization demands a pivot. If technical skills are just a baseline requirement now, and they have an expiration date of roughly 18 months, there has to be a new differentiator for you. Which leads us to the core concept from the source material: playing career chess instead of career checkers.
Yes. This is where we see a very distinct contrast between what the author calls a skill-based career and a strategy-based career.
Walk us through that. The article breaks this down into a few main areas, right?
Right. So the first shift is in focus. In the old skill-based world, your focus was entirely on completing tasks. But in a strategy-based world, your focus shifts to positioning.
Let's pause on the chess metaphor for a second because people use metaphors like that all the time without actually explaining them.
Fair point.
In actual chess, what does positioning mean, and how does that translate to sitting in an office on a Tuesday morning?
Okay, so in chess, a pawn generally only moves forward to attack a specific square. It's very limited.
Right.
But Grandmaster focuses on controlling the center of the board, those middle four squares.
Okay, why the middle?
Because if your pieces control the center, they have maximum mobility. They can pivot to any corner of the board to attack or defend as the game inevitably changes.
Ah, okay. So in a career context.
In a career, controlling the center of the board means mastering adaptable, high-leverage capabilities. It's, the ability to communicate complex ideas, or the ability to manage a team through a crisis, or understanding client psychology.
Oh, I see.
If you have those central positions secured, you can easily pick up whatever new software tool the market demands and just apply it from a position of strength.
That makes perfect sense. You aren't just waiting for a task to be assigned. You are placing yourself at the intersection of where the valuable work naturally flows. What is the next shift the article outlines?
The measure of success. It moves from mastery, being the absolute best at one isolated thing, to impact.
Because mastery doesn't necessarily mean results.
Right. The hard truth is that nobody cares if you know every single hidden shortcut in a software program if the final outcome doesn't actually move the needle for the business.
Yeah, the business just cares about the needle moving. The third shift mentioned in the text is about the career path itself. We are supposed to move from that rigid, linear ladder we talked about to what the author calls a jungle gym with jetpacks, which honestly sounds incredibly chaotic.
It does sound chaotic, but it is nonlinear by design. In a strategy-based career, you might move laterally into a completely different industry just to gain a new perspective.
Okay.
Or you might take a step down in title to learn a critical emerging technology, and then you use that unique combination of experiences to blast upward into a newly created role that literally didn't exist 2 years ago.
But wait, let me put on the hat of a skeptical hiring manager for a second here.
Go for it.
If I see a resume where someone is moving sideways, dropping down in title, and bouncing between completely different industries, doesn't that just look like a flaky job hopper who can't commit to anything? How do you survive the jungle gym without looking totally lost?
That is the perfect segue to the fourth and really the most critical shift: identity. You have to move from defining yourself by a rigid job title like, I am a Tier 2 data analyst, to defining yourself as a value creator.
I have to stop you there because value creator sounds like one of those hollow buzzwords someone puts in their social media bio just to sound important.
It completely does.
Right. So what does that actually mean in practice for a regular professional listening to this?
I know it sounds like jargon, but it's actually about outcomes. A job title describes what you do. A value creator describes the problem you solve.
Okay.
To see how this works in practice, let's look at the tale of two designers from the source material, Maria and Jamal.
Let's dive into that case study because I think it makes it really concrete. So Maria was the absolute queen of a software program called InDesign back in the 2000s. She mastered print graphic design.
She was a pure skill player.
Exactly. She was memorizing the spelling bee dictionary. But then the world went digital. A company called Canva arrived and suddenly made it incredibly easy for anyone with a mouse to drag and drop a pretty decent-looking flyer or presentation.
Right. It totally democratized design.
Yeah, so Maria's hyper-specific technical expertise didn't stretch to cover this new reality. She anchored her entire professional worth to a tool that became cheap, and now, sadly, she's struggling.
And then on the other hand, we have Jamal.
Right.
Jamal also started in design, but he approached it fundamentally differently. He didn't anchor his identity to a specific software suite at all. He branded himself strategically as a visual storyteller for startups.
Which immediately sounds more expensive and more necessary than just saying, I'm a graphic designer.
Precisely. Because he focused on the overarching problem his clients actually face. Startups always struggle to explain what they do to investors and customers.
Oh, all the time.
So Jamal recognized that to solve that problem, he needed a broader toolkit. He learned a bit of user experience design, a bit of digital marketing, maybe some brand psychology.
So he's not an absolute expert in any one of those.
No, he isn't the absolute master of any single one of those tools, but he understands how they connect to tell a compelling story.
He essentially built his own center of the chessboard.
Exactly.
He didn't just list his skills on a resume like ingredients on the side of a cereal box, you know? He wove them into a cohesive narrative.
He took control of his narrative. A recruiter might look at Jamal's very background, maybe he did customer service, then some freelance writing, then design, and think, oh, he's a job hopper.
Right, the flakiness concern.
But Jamal steps in and says, actually, my time in customer service taught me the raw psychology of what frustrates consumers, which I now use to design digital interfaces that reduce friction and increase your sales.
Oh, that's brilliant.
He builds a bridge between his seemingly random experiences, and suddenly his chaotic career path looks like the master plan of a genius.
And because startups will always need to tell their story to get funding, his value is evergreen. Like, Canva can update all at once, but it cannot devise a psychological narrative.
Exactly. AI can't do that.
That brings us to the most practical part of this deep dive. Because understanding the theory of the jungle gym and wanting to be like Jamal is great.
Right.
But how do you actually execute this? The source provides a very specific starter kit for running your career as if you are the CEO of You, Inc.
Yes, the 5 steps.
Let's break down the mechanics of these tactics for you, the listener. The first directive is to audit your portfolio.
Right. If you are the CEO, you have to treat your skills and experiences exactly like an investment portfolio. I mean, if you were investing your actual life savings, you would never put 100% of your money into a single company that relies on a single piece of outdated technology.
No, that would be insane.
You diversify to protect yourself against market shocks.
So how does someone actually perform this audit on themselves today? Like, how do I look at my own skills and know which ones are volatile stocks and which ones are stable bonds?
You have to ruthlessly analyze where you spend your time.
Okay.
Write down your core daily tasks. Then ask yourself 2 questions. First, is this task highly repetitive and rule-based?
Okay.
Second, could a software update or a cheaper contractor reasonably perform this within the next 2 years?
Oof, that's a tough question to ask yourself.
It is, but if the answer is yes, that skill is a volatile stock. It is a commodity. You are over-leveraged in a declining asset, and you need to immediately start diversifying your portfolio by acquiring skills that require human judgment, empathy, or complex problem solving.
All right, let's say I do that audit. I realize, I'm dangerously over-leveraged in spreadsheet data entry, and so I managed to learn some new strategic project management skills. How do I actually communicate that new diversified value to the market?
Well, that requires the next tactic, crafting a value proposition. You have to stop hiding behind your internal corporate job title. An internal title means absolutely nothing to the outside market.
The example from the text really highlights this beautifully. It says, instead of introducing yourself by saying, I'm an operations manager, which is dry and tells me literally nothing about your impact, you reframe it based on the outcome.
Right.
You say, I help companies reduce chaos and scale their operations without burning out their teams.
Look at the psychological difference in those 2 introductions.
It's massive.
The first one asks the listener to figure out what an operations manager does and why it even matters. The second explicitly offers a solution to a universal business pain point. You are no longer an employee looking for a slot to fit into. You are a problem solver offering relief.
Okay, that makes sense on paper. But this next tactic from the source, this is where I have a lot of natural resistance, and I know I'm not alone.
Yes. Building in public.
Yes. The directive is to build in public. The text states this very harsh reality. Visibility is greater than ability.
Yep.
It argues that you must write posts, share your wins, and publish your insights online. I have to challenge this.
Go ahead.
Does every single professional, like the introverted accountant or the behind-the-scenes supply chain manager, do they all have to suddenly become a TikTok thought leader or launch a newsletter just to keep their jobs? Because that sounds absolutely exhausting and, frankly, a bit narcissistic.
That is the most common and completely understandable fear people have when they hear build in public.
Right.
But the mechanism the source is advocating for is very different from being an influencer. It is not about chasing viral fame or millions of followers. It is about the economics of discoverability.
Meaning what, exactly?
Meaning people cannot hire you, partner with you, or promote you if they do not know you exist.
Okay, so if it's not about being famous, what does building in public actually look like for, the introverted accountant?
It looks like leaving a digital trail of breadcrumbs that proves your competence. It's about compounding serendipity.
Compounding serendipity, I like that.
If you solve a really frustrating tax reconciliation issue at work, you don't need to make a dance video about it on TikTok.
Thank goodness.
You just write a short, thoughtful paragraph on LinkedIn explaining the unique process you use to find the error. If you learn a new coding language on the weekend, you post a link to a small, imperfect project you built.
So you are just documenting your journey, not constantly pitching yourself as a guru.
Exactly. You are showing the market how your brain works. Because when an opportunity arises 6 months from now, the person who has visibly and consistently demonstrated their strategic thinking online will always beat the person who has a pristine, perfectly formatted resume, but is a total ghost on the internet.
Wow.
The market trusts what it can see.
The best kept secret in the world is still a secret, and secrets don't get promoted. That brings us to the fourth tactic. If you are putting yourself out there, you are going to encounter people. But the text warns against traditional networking, calling it the equivalent of collecting contacts like Pokemon.
Yeah. Gotta catch 'em all is a terrible strategy for your career.
It really is. We have all been to those forced corporate fixers. You do the sleazy business card shuffle, shaking hands with someone who is actively looking over your shoulder to see if a more important executive just walked into the room.
It's so transactional and shallow.
So what is the alternative? How does a U Inc. CEO actually build a network?
Real networking is highly intentional curation. The source argues you need to build a circle of people who serve very specific functions. You need people who can open doors for you, people who will loudly cheer you on, and most importantly, people who will challenge your thinking.
Okay.
You want people in your corner who view the chessboard from a completely different angle.
How do you actually find those people who challenge your thinking, though?
You seek out peers in parallel industries. If you are in marketing, don't just network with other marketers who read the exact same blogs you do. Network with a behavioral psychologist or a supply chain logistician.
That's interesting.
They will look at your marketing problem and say, have you thought about moving your night over here based on how human behavior actually works under stress? They introduce friction to your ideas, and that friction prevents you from getting complacent.
Which feeds perfectly into the final tactic in the starter kit, future-proofing yourself. You avoid complacency by reading outside your bubble.
Yes, it is the ultimate defensive move in career chess.
Right.
If you only consume industry news specifically tailored to your current niche, you will absolutely be blindsided by macroeconomic shifts.
Yeah.
You have to track broader cultural shifts, follow technological leaps, and anticipate where the market is going before it gets there.
It's the mechanism of foresight. You aren't just reacting to the news, you are looking at the underlying currents.
That is the dividing line between the strategic players who are ready for the next wave and the people who end up in the surprised by mass layoffs crowd. The strategic player saw the water receding months ago, recognized a tsunami was coming, and already moved their sandcastle to higher ground.
Wow. So if we zoom all the way out and look at all these tactics, auditing your portfolio, crafting an outcome-based value proposition, documenting your journey in public, curating a diverse network, and tracking the macro trends, we arrive at the ultimate mic drop truth of this entire deep dive.
And what's that?
Your career is not a job. It is a business.
Yes.
In the old world, the company you worked for was the business, and you were just a localized cog with a highly specific set of skills. But today, you are the CEO of You Inc. Your job is to define your target market, build your unique brand, and place smart, calculated bets on your own future.
That is so well said. Skills will never be entirely useless. They will always serve as the foundation. They are the initial price of admission that gets your foot in the door.
Right.
But strategic positioning is what keeps you in the game long term.
Because hoping that someone else at your company will always know what to do with you, or hoping that they will organically recognize your value without you broadcasting it, that is simply not a valid business plan for you, Inc.
It really isn't. It is the equivalent of taking your hands off your pieces and just surrendering control of the chessboard to your opponent.
Yeah.
Which brings me to a final thought I really want to leave you with, something for you to chew on and apply after you finish listening.
Let's hear it.
The text talks extensively about spotting where the puck is going to future-proof yourself. Well, I want you to conduct a very specific audit today. Look at the tasks you spent the majority of your time on this past week at work. Really break down the mechanics of what you did.
Okay.
Now imagine if a new AI update or a software integration could suddenly do 80% of those specific tasks within the next 24 months. If that happens, what is the inherently human strategy, the unique, irreplaceable value creation that you can pivot toward right now? How can you reposition your pieces on the board today so that when that technological disruption inevitably arrives, you are already waiting at the next destination, ready to lead?
That is a brilliant and urgent question to end on. The chess clock is ticking, and it is your move. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into future-proofing your professional life. Don't wait for the tide to come in and wash away your mastery. Start playing career chess with your Monday morning. Catch you next time.